Your 20s aren't just the decade where you figure out what not to do. They're also the decade where a handful of boring, unglamorous habits quietly compound into the life everyone says they want. If partying too much or ignoring your money can set you back years, the flip side is just as true. A few consistent habits, stacked over 10 years, can put your entire life on easy mode. So today, we're doing the habits tier list, the habits that actually build the life you're chasing. Let's get into it. First on the list is journaling. Even just a few minutes, a few times a week. This one gets dismissed a lot because it sounds a little soft, but there's real value in actually processing what's going on in your life instead of just living through it on autopilot and never reflecting on any of it. Writing things down forces a level of clarity that just thinking about them doesn't. You start noticing patterns, the same problems repeating, the same decisions you keep regretting, the same wins you keep forgetting to acknowledge. It doesn't need to be some deep philosophical exercise either. Sometimes it's just dumping your thoughts out so they're not rattling around in your head all day. Over time, it becomes a record you can actually look back on, and that's genuinely valuable. You'll be able to see how much you've grown, or notice when you're stuck in a loop you didn't even realize you were in. It's one of those habits that costs you almost nothing and quietly makes you more self aware. Solid foundations. Next, saving and investing early. If there's one habit on this entire list that rewards you disproportionately for starting now instead of later, it's this one. Money you invest at 22 has almost double the amount of time to compound compared to money you invest at 32. That 10-year head start is worth more than most people realize because compound growth isn't linear, it's exponential. You don't need to be some finance expert to get this right either. Open a retirement account, automate a percentage of every paycheck before you ever see it, and just leave it alone. The habit isn't become a stock picking genius. The habit is simply don't skip this step for an entire decade. Most people wait until their finances feel more stable before they start. But the truth is, it never feels perfectly stable. You just have to start with whatever amount you can, even if it's small, and build the habit before you build the balance. Every year you delay is a year of growth you can never get back. This changes your life, and honestly, might be the single biggest one on this whole list. Next up is having a morning routine. This doesn't need to be some extreme 5 a.m., cold plunge and meditate situation you saw some influencer doing. It just needs to exist in some consistent form. Having a predictable way you start your day, even something as simple as making your bed, having coffee without immediately checking your phone, or doing a few minutes of stretching gives you a small sense of control and a small win before the rest of the world gets a chance to throw anything at you. People who protect their mornings tend to protect the rest of their day too, because that first hour sets the tone for how intentional the following hours feel. Compare that to waking up and immediately grabbing your phone, scrolling through everyone else's lives before you've even had a chance to think your own thoughts. That's a rough way to start the day, and it happens to most people without them even realizing it's become the default. A simple, protected morning routine is a small habit that ends up shaping a surprising amount of how the rest of your day goes. Fast tracks you, moving right along, optimizing every single minute of your day. This is the extreme hustle culture version of productivity, and I want to be clear that this is not a habit worth chasing. There's this pressure online to squeeze value out of every waking second. Listening to podcasts at 2x speed while working out, scheduling your relaxation time down to the minute, feeling guilty anytime you're not being productive. That's not sustainable, and honestly, it's not even effective long term. Rest is part of the system, not the enemy of it. Your brain and body need actual downtime to recover, and when you refuse to give yourself that, you don't get more done. You just burn out faster and end up doing everything worse. I've watched people chase this level of optimization in their 20s only to crash hard in their late 20s or early 30s, completely exhausted and resentful of the goals they were chasing in the first place. You're allowed to have unproductive hours. You're allowed to just watch a show and do nothing. That doesn't make you lazy. It makes you sustainable. This goes into the don't stress about it tier. Next up, learning to cook. A handful of solid meals you can make without a recipe in front of you is one of those unglamorous skills that pays you back constantly in small ways for the rest of your life. It saves you money. Compared to eating out or ordering delivery constantly, it keeps you healthier because you actually know what's going into your food. And honestly, it's just a useful life skill that makes you more self sufficient. You don't need to become a 5 course meal kind of cook. Just having 5 or 6 meals you can make well, that you actually enjoy eating, changes your relationship with food and your budget at the same time. A lot of people in their 20s survive on takeout and instant meals simply because they never took the time to learn even the basics, and then they wonder why their finances and their health both feel off. This is one of those habits that seems small in the moment, but adds up to real savings and real health benefits over years. Solid foundations. Up next is traveling. Even if it's not some elaborate backpacking trip across 3 continents, getting outside of your usual environment stretches your perspective in a way that almost nothing else can. When you only ever see your own city, your own routines, your own group of people, it's easy to assume that's just how life works everywhere. Traveling breaks that illusion. It shows you different ways people live, different values, different paces of life, and it usually makes you appreciate things back home that you'd otherwise take for granted. You don't need a huge budget for this either. Even a few real trips scattered through your 20s, whether it's a road trip to a new city or an actual flight somewhere unfamiliar, adds real texture to who you are as a person. It gives you stories, it gives you perspective, and it reminds you that the world is bigger than your day to day bubble. This is a nice bonus to have, but not mandatory. Next on the board, reading consistently. I'm not talking about forcing yourself through some 500-page classic you have zero interest in. I'm talking about building a habit of consistently putting new ideas into your head, whatever form that takes for you. 15 minutes before bed, an audiobook on your commute, whatever fits your life. The compounding effect of this over a decade is honestly wild when you think about it. Almost everything you'll need to learn in your 30s and 40s, someone has already figured out and written down. Business lessons, relationship lessons, mental health lessons, all of it. Reading is just the fastest way to access decades of other people's experience without having to live through all of their mistakes yourself. The people who read consistently in their 20s tend to make sharper decisions later, not because they're smarter, but because they've been exposed to more frameworks and more ways of thinking about problems. It's a slow habit with a slow payoff, but it's one of the few habits that makes literally every other area of your life a little bit easier over time. Fast tracks you tier. Next on the list, building an emergency fund. This is the unglamorous cousin of investing. Nobody posts about their emergency fund online. There's no exciting graph going up and to the right. It's just money sitting there quietly in case something goes wrong. But it's genuinely one of the most important financial habits you can build because it's what keeps one bad month, one surprise car repair, one unexpected medical bill from turning into a full blown financial crisis. Without this cushion, people end up relying on credit cards or loans to cover emergencies, and that debt compounds against you in the exact opposite way your investments compound for you. Having 3 to 6 months of expenses saved up doesn't just protect you financially, it buys you the confidence to take risks elsewhere in your life. Whether that's leaving a bad job, starting a business, or making a big move, because you know you have a safety net underneath you if it doesn't work out right away, this changes your life. Up next, limiting social media. I want to be clear, this isn't about deleting every app and going full digital hermit. It's about not letting it run your free time and your self worth by default, which is what happens if you never put any guardrails in place. Left unchecked, social media will happily eat hours of your day without you noticing. And worse, it quietly shifts your sense of what a normal life looks like because you're constantly comparing your day to day to everyone else's highlight reel. Small changes make a big difference here. Turning off notifications, setting app timers, deciding not to touch your phone for the first 30 minutes after waking up. None of that requires willpower of steel. It just requires a little bit of friction between you and the scroll. The goal isn't to never use it, it's to make sure you're the one deciding when you use it, instead of it deciding for you. Nice bonus for you to have. Moving on, having your whole life figured out. This isn't really a habit, it's more like permission I want to give you. Somewhere along the way, people got this idea that by 25 or 30, you're supposed to have the career, the relationship, the house, and the 5 year plan all locked in. And when that doesn't happen, which it usually doesn't, people spiral into thinking they're behind. The truth is, even people in their 40s and 50s are still figuring things out as they go. Nobody actually has this fully solved, no matter how put together their life looks online. Your 20s are supposed to be a testing ground. You're allowed to try a career and hate it. You're allowed to date the wrong people before you find the right one. You're allowed to not know what you want yet, as long as you're still moving and learning something along the way. The danger isn't having things unfigured out. The danger is freezing up because you think you're supposed to have it all figured out already. Let go of that pressure. This is squarely don't stress about it. Next, taking your health seriously. And I mean actually seriously, not just I'll start Monday, seriously, that never actually starts. Lifting weights, walking regularly, sleeping enough hours, eating reasonably well most of the time. None of this needs to be extreme or perfectly optimized. This isn't about chasing some specific look either. Your health is genuinely the operating system that everything else in your life runs on. Your energy levels, your mood, your confidence, your ability to actually follow through on your goals, all of it is downstream of how you're treating your body on a daily basis. It's incredibly easy to ignore your health in your 20s because you still feel okay even when you're not taking care of yourself. And that false sense of security is exactly what lets bad habits pile up quietly for years. The people who build this habit early aren't scrambling to undo a decade of damage in their 30s and 40s. They're just starting from a much better baseline with more energy and options available to them. Changes your life. Next on the list is living below your means. This one sounds obvious, but very few people actually live it out once their income starts increasing. The gap between what you earn and what you spend is where your entire financial future gets built. Not from some lucky investment, not from a huge raise, but from that gap consistently over years. The problem is that as your paycheck grows, it's incredibly tempting to let your lifestyle grow right along with it. Upgrading your car, your apartment, your going out budget, until suddenly you're making more money than ever, but somehow still living paycheck to paycheck. This doesn't mean depriving yourself or never enjoying your money. It means being intentional about which upgrades are actually worth it to you and which ones are just keeping up appearances. The people who build real financial freedom in their 30s and 40s are almost always the ones who kept their expenses in check while their income was climbing in their 20s, not the ones who spent every extra dollar the moment it hit their account. This will put you on the right track. Next up, we've got finding a mentor. Someone who's a few steps further down the path than you, who's willing to answer your questions and occasionally tell you when you're about to make a dumb decision. This doesn't need to be some formal arrangement with scheduled meetings. Most of the best mentorships I've seen happen organically, just from someone being willing to ask for advice and someone else being willing to give it. The value here is that a mentor lets you skip years of trial and error. Instead of learning a hard lesson the slow, expensive way, you get to borrow someone else's experience and avoid the mistake altogether. A lot of people in their 20s are too proud or too nervous to reach out and ask, worried it'll make them look inexperienced. But literally everyone successful you look up to had someone ahead of them who they learned from, whether that was a boss, a parent, an older coworker, or just someone in their industry they admired. Don't wait for a mentor to find you. Go find one. Ask the question. Send the message. Solid foundations for this one. Next on the list, meal prepping. I know this sounds almost too simple to matter, but hear me out. Meal prepping isn't really about the food. It's about removing decisions from your week. When you're tired after work and you haven't planned anything, you're going to make the worst possible choice 9 times out of 10. Whether that's fast food, delivery, or just not eating a real meal at all. Prepping a batch of meals on a Sunday means future. You doesn't have to think, doesn't have to decide, and doesn't have to spend money impulsively just because you're hungry and exhausted. It saves you cash, it keeps your health more consistent, and it removes one more source of daily friction from your life. Is it going to change your entire trajectory? No, probably not. But it's one of those habits that quietly makes every other habit on this list easier to maintain. Because a person who's eating well and not scrambling for dinner has more energy and bandwidth for everything else going on in their life. A nice bonus habit for you to have. Next up is building a high income skill. Not a hobby, not something you dabble in on the weekends, an actual skill that someone will pay you real money for. Sales, a trade, copywriting, coding, whatever fits the direction you're headed. Here's the thing most people get backwards. They wait for the right opportunity to come along instead of realizing they need to become the kind of person opportunities actually go to. The people who look lucky with money in their 30s almost always spent their 20s quietly stacking a skill in the background while everyone else clocked out at 5 p.m. and called it a day. It doesn't happen overnight either. You're not going to be great at something after a month of dabbling. It takes showing up consistently, getting reps in, and being willing to be bad at something before you're good at it. But this is genuinely the highest leverage thing you can do with your free hours outside of work because a skill compounds. It doesn't expire, nobody can take it from you, and it usually opens doors that a resume alone never will. If you had to pick one thing off this entire list to obsess over, honestly, this might be it. Just like the other two financial habits, this one land right in the changes your life category. Next up, saying no and setting boundaries. This is one of those skills nobody teaches you, and most people don't pick it up until they've already wasted years of their 20s on things they never actually wanted to do in the first place. Saying yes to every favor, every hangout, every extra responsibility at work feels like the nice thing to do, but it slowly erodes your time, your energy, and honestly, your self respect. The people who protect their time aren't being rude, they're just being intentional. Learning to say, that doesn't work for me, or I can't take that on right now without over explaining yourself is a skill that takes practice because it feels uncomfortable at first. You'll worry people will be upset. Some might be, but the people worth keeping around will respect it, and the ones who don't were probably taking advantage of you anyway. This habit protects everything else you're trying to build: your money, your energy, your relationships, because none of that can grow if you're constantly giving pieces of yourself away to people and things that don't deserve it. This one will help you stay on the right track. Next up is surrounding yourself with the right people. This might be the most underrated habit on the entire list because it doesn't feel like a habit. It feels passive, like something that just happens to you. But it's not passive at all. You will average out to the people you spend the most time with, whether you mean to or not. Their standards become your standards. Their excuses become acceptable to you. Their ambition, or lack of it, rubs off on you slowly, in ways you usually don't notice until years have already gone by. If the people around you are disciplined, curious, and pushing themselves to grow, that becomes your normal, and you rise to meet it without even trying that hard. But if the people around you are negative, stagnant, or actively pulling you toward bad decisions, it becomes incredibly easy to get dragged down to their level, even if you started out with better intentions. Being intentional about who gets access to your time, auditing your circle every once in a while, and being honest about who's helping you grow versus who's holding you back is one of the highest leverage, lowest cost habits you can build. Changes your life, no question. Last but not least, we have picking up a new hobby or skill, something outside of work, purely because you enjoy it, not because it's going to make you money or advance your career. This keeps you interesting as a person and keeps your brain flexible in a way that just grinding at your job never will. It's not going to single handedly change your financial trajectory, and that's fine. That's not really the point of this one. The point is that a lot of people in their 20s let their entire identity collapse into just their job title. And when work gets hard or stressful, they have nothing else to fall back on for a sense of who they are. Having something you're genuinely curious about, whether that's music, art, a sport, a language, anything, gives you texture outside of your career and gives you something to talk about that isn't just work. It also keeps you learning how to be a beginner at something again, which is a valuable skill in itself because most adults stop practicing what it feels like to be bad at something new. A very nice bonus to have. And that's the full board. Every tier's filled up now. Some of these you probably expected, some you maybe didn't see coming until I said them. You don't need to build all of these overnight, and you definitely don't need to be perfect at any of them. Pick one or two from the top tiers, get consistent, and let them compound. That's really the whole game. Let me know in the comments what you'd have ranked differently. And if you want more tier lists like this, make sure to like and subscribe. I'll catch you guys in the next one.